Have you noticed how in our world today, the so-called big nations still believe they can look down on smaller countries and get away with it? They think their words, their arrogance, their threats will vanish into thin air. But in 2025, the Philippines stood up and changed that story. A country once dismissed as weak, once colonized and underestimated, suddenly turned the tables on some of the most powerful leaders on earth. And the world had no choice but to listen. 5 different leaders, from France, Japan, Australia, the United Kingdom, and China, all made the same mistake. They underestimated the spirit of a nation that has carried centuries of resistance, courage, and pride. They thought insults would pass. Instead, those very words set fire to a movement that left them embarrassed, forced into apologies, resignations, or global humiliation. Let's walk through this turning point in history, and see how the Philippines transformed disrespect into power. It began in Europe, in April 2025. At the European Naval Forum in Marseille, French President Emmanuel Macron delivered a line he will never forget. Without saying the word Philippines, he implied it, saying that smaller nations should stay away from matters beyond their ability in the South China Sea. It sounded harmless in French halls. But in Asia, it cut deep. Those words carried the smell of old colonial arrogance. Southeast Asians still remember France's colonial record in Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam. To hear that tone again, directed at the Philippines, was like reopening old wounds. But this time was different. Within hours, Manila summoned the French ambassador. Filipinos erupted online with a storm of hashtags demanding respect. President Bongbong Marcos Jr. himself answered in words that echoed across the region. The Philippines is not a background sound. We are a civilization that existed long before France became a republic. France scrambled to spin the remarks, but the damage was irreversible. Military cooperation was frozen. His Asia trip was cancelled. His credibility in the region collapsed. One careless line buried years of French diplomacy. Then came Japan. For decades, Tokyo and Manila had been building one of their warmest relationships since the devastation of World War II. They were allies, running naval drills, exchanging intelligence, modernizing defenses side by side. But in 2025, Defense Minister County Nakamura shattered that trust. He stood before the Tokyo Defense Conference and declared, "The Philippines may have patrol boats, but they don't yet have a navy. They should focus on dialogue instead of deterrence." Those words landed like a slap. It wasn't just about ships, it was about dignity. The Philippines had spent years slowly rebuilding its fleet, investing in defense against China's encroachment. For one of its closest partners to dismiss that effort was unacceptable. Filipinos answered immediately. #We have a navy flooded social platforms, complete with photos and videos of their growing fleet. Veterans, soldiers, and ordinary citizens demanded respect. President Marcos responded calmly but firmly. Courage is not measured by the number of ships, but by the will to defend sovereignty. Days later, under immense pressure, County Nakamura resigned. His career ended, not on the battlefield, but with a microphone. And in that moment, the Philippines showed the world that no ally, no matter how friendly, could belittle its progress without consequence. But the storm didn't stop there. In June 2025, across the ocean in Australia, Senator Troy Wallace threw one of the ugliest insults of all. During a heated budget debate, he said, "Why waste millions on a banana republic like the Philippines? The money will just be wasted anyway." The phrase, "banana republic," carries a dark history. Countries exploited by foreign corporations, stripped of dignity, left poor and unstable. To apply that term to the Philippines, a sovereign democracy with a proud people, was beyond offensive. Protests exploded. Filipinos in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane filled the streets with banners declaring, "We are not a colony of contempt." Online, #Not a Banana Republic shot across timelines. In Manila, lawmakers froze trade talks with Australia. Wallace's party distanced itself from him, donors withdrew, and he was removed from the Foreign Affairs Committee. His insult didn't just anger Filipinos, it destroyed his own career. Then the fire spread to London. In April 2025, during a debate about immigration, UK Prime Minister Elizabeth Harrow crossed a line she would regret. She said Britain needed tighter controls on so-called low-skilled workers from countries like the Philippines. But here's the truth. Over 40,000 Filipinos serve in the UK's NHS, as nurses, caregivers, and frontliners. During the COVID crisis, they put their lives on the line to save British lives. To call them low-skilled was more than wrong. It was betrayal. The reaction was immediate. Filipino communities across the UK mobilized protests. Nurses told their stories, sharing videos under the viral #skilled-not-clutter. Even members of Harrow's own party criticized her for disrespecting those who held up Britain's health system. She apologized publicly on BBC. But the damage stuck. Her approval ratings sank, her credibility fractured, and the Philippines demanded official recognition of its workers' contributions. And then came the most dangerous insult of all, from China. In August 2025, during a closed-door forum, General Zhang Weiyou tried to intimidate Manila. He said, "If the Philippines keeps playing with fire, they will be crushed in under a week." But this was not the Philippines of the past. By then, Manila had already strengthened its defenses. Indian-made BrAMOS missiles, expanded American bases, joint drills with Japan, Australia, and the US. Instead of isolating Manila, Zhang's words did the opposite. The world rallied behind the Philippines. Washington reaffirmed its defense treaty. Japan, Australia, India, even Vietnam condemned China's threat. And just a week later, Zhang disappeared from public view, reportedly reprimanded and forced to step down. His attempt at intimidation backfired spectacularly. 5 leaders. 5 insults. 5 humiliations. And through it all, the Philippines didn't crumble. It stood taller. The lesson? Respect in the 21st century does not belong only to superpowers. Respect belongs to nations that know their history, defend their people, and refuse to be silenced. In 2025, the Philippines proved it was not just a dot on the map. It was a voice the world had to reckon with. A people who had fought Spain, America, Japan, and now defend their seas with courage. A nation no longer in the shadows, but standing under the light of its own dignity. So I leave you with this question. Which of these 5 leaders made the gravest mistake, and do you believe this was the year the Philippines finally turned the page and claimed its rightful place on the world stage? Because history shows us, you can underestimate the Philippines once, but you won't underestimate it twice.